The Velar Empire had ruled the stars for 300 years. They had conquered 47 star systems. They had crushed hundreds of species under their boots. Their warships darkened the skies of countless worlds, and their emperor sat upon a throne built from the bones of those who dared to resist. High Sovereign was the most powerful being in the known galaxy. He had led the empire for 60 years, and in that time, no species had ever stood against him and survived. His advisors called him the Eternal Flame. His enemies called him Death itself, believed he was destined to rule everything that existed among the stars. When his expansion fleets reached the edge of the Orion Arm, they discovered a small yellow star with 8 planets orbiting around it. The third planet was blue and green, covered with water and strange vegetation. The beings who lived there called it Earth. They called themselves humans. Scouts observed the humans for several weeks. They watched their primitive ships struggle between planets. They studied their weapons, their cities, their governments. The reports came back the same every time. The humans were weak. They had only recently learned to travel between stars. Their weapons were laughable compared to Velar plasma cannons. Their bodies were soft and fragile. They would be easy to conquer. But before could give the order to invade, something unexpected happened. A ship appeared at the edge of Velar space. It was ancient and beautiful, covered with patterns of light that seemed to flow like water. It belonged to the Collective, a species so old that they had watched the first stars die. They never involved themselves in the affairs of younger species. They simply watched and waited and kept their silence. Until now. The ambassador requested a meeting with Emperor. This had never happened before in recorded history. Was curious, so he agreed. The ambassador was tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of 1,000,000 years. He stood before the emperor's throne and spoke in a voice like distant thunder. "We have come to deliver a warning," the ambassador said. "Do not touch the third planet of the Sol system. Do not threaten the ones who call themselves humans." Leaned forward on his throne, his advisors exchanged confused glances. This was not what they had expected. "You travel across the galaxy to warn me about those primitive creatures?" asked. "They can barely leave their own planet. Their weapons are toys. Why should I fear them?" The ambassador did not blink. His ancient eyes stared directly at the emperor. "Because they are not what they appear to be," he said. "We have watched them for 10,000 of their years. They are a species forged in endless war. They fight each other. They fight nature. They fight death itself. And they never stop. They do not surrender. They do not accept defeat. When you push them into a corner, they do not cower. They become something else, something dangerous." Laughed. The sound echoed through his throne room like breaking glass. "Every species fights," he said. "Every species thinks they are special, and every species falls before the Velar Empire. These humans will be no different." The ambassador was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke again. "We have given our warning. What you do with it is your choice. But remember this, High Sovereign. The humans have a saying on their world. They say that those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. They have a longer memory than most. We remember what happened to the last empire that underestimated a young and angry species." He turned and walked away without waiting for permission. Watched him go with fury burning in his chest. No one walked away from the High Sovereign. No one. "Send the invasion fleet," he ordered. "I want that planet burning within the month." Far away, on the blue and green world called Earth, Admiral stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Fleet. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. He had defended colonies from raiders. He had spent his entire life preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now that war was coming to him. "Admiral, we have confirmed contact," his officer reported. "Unknown vessels at the edge of the solar system. The design matches nothing in our database. There are hundreds of them, sir, maybe more." studied the holographic display in front of him. The enemy ships were massive, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved with perfect coordination, like a single organism with hundreds of bodies. "Get me the president," he said quietly. President received the call in her office. She was 61 years old, a former combat pilot who had risen through the ranks of politics with the same determination she had shown in the cockpit. Her face was calm as she listened to Admiral's report, but her hands gripped the edge of her desk until her knuckles turned white. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Days, maybe weeks," replied. "We don't know their intentions yet, but their formation is aggressive. This isn't a friendly visit." Closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the billions of people living their lives below her, unaware that everything was about to change. "We try diplomacy first," she said. "Prepare a delegation, our best diplomats, our minds. We offer them peace. We offer them trade. We offer them whatever they want as long as our people survive." The delegation was assembled within hours. 12 of humanity's finest representatives boarded a ship and traveled to meet the unknown fleet. They carried messages of peace. They carried gifts. They carried hope. The Velar Empire executed them on arrival. Their deaths were broadcast across every frequency, on every channel, to every corner of human space. The message was clear. The Velar did not want peace. They did not want trade. They wanted submission, and they would accept nothing less. Admiral watched the broadcast in silence. Around him, his officers wept with rage. Some punched walls. Some screamed curses at the enemy they could not yet reach. Simply stood there, his face like stone, his eyes burning with something cold and terrible. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," he said finally. "Tell them to prepare for war, and tell them this is not a war we are going to lose." Far away in the depths of space, the ambassador watched the events unfold on his ancient ship. He shook his head slowly, a gesture of sorrow that transcended species. "We warned them," he whispered to himself. "Now they will learn." The first human blood had been spilled, but it would not be the last. And before this was over, the stars themselves would remember why humanity should never be underestimated. The Velar invasion came like a storm from the darkest nightmare. 800 warships descended upon the solar system, their weapons blazing with green fire that turned everything they touched into ash and memory. Mars Station 7 was the first to fall. The colony had been home to 50,000 people, miners, scientists, families who had built their lives among the red dust. They had less than an hour of warning before the Velar fleet arrived. The station commander tried to evacuate as many people as possible, but the Velar did not wait. Their plasma cannons tore through the station's shields like paper. The explosions could be seen from Earth, a new star burning briefly in the night sky before fading into darkness. The lunar bases fell next. City, where humanity had taken its first steps beyond Earth. New Sol, the manufacturing hub that built half of Earth's starships. Port Helena, where children played in underground gardens, never knowing the true color of the sky. All of them were destroyed in a single terrible day. Admiral led Earth's defense fleet into battle. 200 ships, the pride of human engineering, facing an enemy that outnumbered them 4-1. Knew the odds. He knew what was coming. But he also knew that every minute he bought meant more civilians could escape to safety. The battle lasted 6 hours. Captain Park commanded the destroyer Sol's Fury from the bridge. She was 32 years old, young for her rank, but she had earned her position through skill and courage. Now that skill was being tested in ways she had never imagined. "Enemy cruiser on approach, bearing 720, her tactical officer shouted. "They're targeting our engines." His hands flew across her console. She pushed her ship into a spinning dive, narrowly avoiding the plasma blast that would have killed them all. The Sol's Fury returned fire, its missiles striking the Velar cruiser's hull. The enemy ship shuddered but did not stop. All around her, human ships were dying. She watched the carrier Indomitable break apart under concentrated fire. She saw the battleship Earth's Pride ram a Velar destroyer in a final act of defiance, both ships vanishing in a ball of fire. She heard the screams on the radio as crew after crew called for help that would never come. "Admiral is ordering a retreat," her communications officer said, his voice breaking. "All surviving ships fall back to secondary positions." Of the 200 ships that had joined the battle, only 31 remained. The rest were scattered across space, their crews floating among the debris, their dreams of victory turned to dust. Made a decision that would haunt her for years. Instead of retreating to the secondary positions, she ordered her ship to jump toward the asteroid belt. It was a dangerous move, one that could have killed everyone aboard. But she had seen what was waiting at the secondary positions. The Velar had anticipated the retreat. They had ships waiting there. "If we go where they expect us, we die," she told her crew. "So we go somewhere else, we hide, we survive, and then we fight again." The Soul's Fury disappeared into the asteroid belt, one small ship carrying 147 souls who refused to give up. On Earth, the Velar landing craft descended like rain. They targeted the major cities first: London, Beijing, New York, Moscow, Tokyo, Seoul. Millions of people tried to flee, clogging the roads and highways with desperate streams of humanity. Many did not make it. The Velar soldiers were tall and powerful, with thick gray skin and 4 arms that made them terrifying in close combat. They wore armor that shrugged off human bullets like water. They carried plasma rifles that could vaporize a person in a single shot, and they showed no mercy. President refused to leave the capital. Her advisors begged her to evacuate, to hide in some secret bunker where the enemy could not find her. She refused. "If I run, our people will lose hope," she said. "I will stay until the last possible moment. Make sure the resistance networks are activated. Make sure our people know that this is not the end." Only when the Velar forces were within kilometers of the capital did she finally agree to leave. A secret tunnel led to a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Provence. From there, she would continue to lead, even if the world above burned. Sergeant Minu watched the city he loved turn to rubble. He was 40 years old, a career soldier who had never expected to fight anything more dangerous than pirates. Now he was fighting for the survival of his species. His unit had been cut off during the initial attack. 30 soldiers, trapped in a city occupied by thousands of Velar troops. Any sensible commander would have told them to surrender. Minu was not a sensible commander. "We don't have plasma weapons," he told his soldiers. "We don't have air support. We don't have reinforcements. What we do have is knowledge. We know these streets. We know these buildings. We know every tunnel, every sewer, every hiding spot. The enemy doesn't. That is our advantage." That night, they struck for the first time. A Velar supply convoy was moving through the industrial district, carrying weapons and food for the occupation forces. Minu's team planted explosives along the route. The blast destroyed 3 vehicles and killed dozens of Velar soldiers. By morning, the Velar commander was furious. He ordered a search of the entire district. His soldiers found nothing. Minu and his team had already melted back into the shadows, preparing for their next attack. The same story repeated itself across the planet. In every city, in every country, small groups of humans refused to accept defeat. They fought with whatever they had: rifles, explosives, knives, their bare hands. They died by the thousands, but for every one that fell, 2 more took their place. The Velar had expected submission. They had conquered dozens of species before, and all of them had surrendered once the fighting became hopeless. The humans were different. The more the Velar pushed, the harder the humans fought back. In her bunker beneath the mountains, President recorded a message. It was broadcast on secret frequencies. heard by resistance fighters across the planet and by the surviving ships hiding in the asteroid belt. Her face was tired but determined. Her voice was steady and strong. "They think they have won," she said. "They think we are broken. They are wrong. We have lost battles, but we have not lost the war. As long as one of us still breathes, as long as one of us still fights, humanity survives. So hide if you must. Rest if you need to, but never stop believing. Never stop preparing. Because one day we will strike back. And on that day they will learn what it truly means to face humanity." Across the ruins of Earth, across the scattered ships in the asteroid belt, across the hidden bunkers and secret bases, people listened. And despite everything they had lost, despite the death and the destruction and the despair, they felt something stir in their hearts. Hope. The Velar had taken their homes. They had taken their cities. They had taken millions of lives, but they had not taken the one thing that mattered most. They had not taken the human spirit. And as long as that remained, the war was not over. It had only begun. 2 years passed. 2 years of blood and fire and endless struggle. 2 years of living in shadows and fighting in darkness. 2 years that transformed humanity from a conquered species into something the galaxy had never seen before. In the asteroid belt, the survivors built their sanctuary. Captain Park's desperate gamble had paid off. The Soul's Fury had found other surviving ships hiding among the rocks, scared and scattered but alive. Slowly, they came together, forming a hidden fleet in the most unlikely of places. Admiral arrived on a damaged frigate 3 months after the fall. He had been presumed dead, his flagship destroyed in the final battle, but had survived, rescued by a civilian transport that had been fleeing the system. He had spent weeks recovering from his wounds, and more weeks searching for any sign of organized resistance. When he found the hidden fleet in the asteroid belt, he wept for the first time in 40 years. "We are not beaten," he told the assembled crews. "We are not broken, we are reborn, and we will have our revenge." Chief Engineer became the architect of humanity's resurrection. She was 55 years old, a former shipyard director who had spent her career building vessels of peace. Now she dedicated every waking hour to building weapons of war. The Velar had made a critical mistake during their invasion. In their arrogance, they had not bothered to destroy all the debris from the battle. Human salvage teams, working in secret, recovered pieces of Velar technology from the wreckage. Studied these pieces obsessively, taking apart every component, learning every secret. "Their shields are powerful but predictable," she explained to Admiral during one of their meetings. "They expect energy weapons because that is what everyone uses. But kinetic weapons, physical projectiles moving at extreme speeds, can penetrate their defenses, and their sensors have a blind spot. They cannot detect ships that are cold and silent." From these discoveries, she designed a new class of warship. They called it the Reaper class. It was smaller than the Velar cruisers, barely half their size, but it was fast, silent, and deadly. Its main weapon was not a plasma cannon but a magnetic accelerator that could fire metal slugs at a fraction of the speed of light. Combined with specialized EMP warheads that could disable Velar electronics, it was the perfect assassin. Building the ships was the hardest part. They had no factories, no supply lines, no support. Everything had to be salvaged, recycled, or stolen. Led raiding parties that attacked Velar supply convoys in hit-and-run operations. They would strike fast, take what they needed, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. By the end of the second year, they had 27 Reaper-class destroyers, not enough to fight the entire Velar fleet, but enough to hurt them, enough to make them bleed. On Earth, the resistance had grown into a force that the Velar could not ignore. Commander Shin was the heart of this network. She was 43 years old, a former intelligence officer who had spent her career in the shadows. Now those skills made her the most dangerous person on the planet. Never stayed in one place for more than a few days. She moved constantly, traveling through secret tunnels and hidden pathways, coordinating thousands of resistance fighters across the globe. She knew the name of every cell leader, every safe house, every weapons cache. She knew the patrol schedules of every Velar garrison, and she used that knowledge to make the occupation a nightmare. The Velar controlled the cities, but they did not control the countryside. Human fighters struck from forests and mountains, from sewers and underground bunkers. They destroyed power stations, poisoned water supplies, and assassinated officers in their beds. Every day, the Velar death toll rose. Every day, more humans joined the fight. Sergeant Minu had become a legend. They called him the Ghost of, a phantom who struck without warning and vanished without a trace. His original team of 30 had grown to over 500 fighters. They controlled entire districts of the city, zones where Velar soldiers feared to enter. The occupation commander tried everything to stop him. Patrols, checkpoints, random raids. Nothing worked. Minu knew his city better than the enemy ever could. He used that knowledge to make them suffer. One night, his team launched their most ambitious operation yet. The Velar had built a communications center in the heart of the city, a massive tower that coordinated all their operations in the region. Minu decided to destroy it. The attack took weeks to plan. They mapped every guard position, every security system, every patrol route. When the night came, they moved like shadows through the darkness. Explosives were planted at key structural points. Guards were eliminated silently, one by one. By the time the alarm sounded, Minu and his team were already gone. The explosion lit up the night sky. The communications tower collapsed, taking with it the ability to coordinate Velar forces across 3 provinces. It was the largest single blow the resistance had ever struck. In her bunker beneath the mountains, President watched the footage with tears in her eyes. "They are fighting," she whispered. "After everything, they are still fighting." She had aged 10 years in the past, too. The weight of leadership in such dark times had carved deep lines into her face, but her spirit remained unbroken. Every week, she broadcast messages of hope to the resistance. Every week, more people listened. Communication between the resistance on Earth and the fleet in the asteroid belt was difficult but not impossible. Commander had established a network of hidden transmitters that could send coded messages beyond the planet. It was slow and risky, but it worked. When Admiral finally made contact with President, the moment felt like the first sunrise after an endless night. "Madam President," his voice crackled through the static, "the fleet is ready, 27 warships fully armed and fully crewed. We have been training for 2 years. We have been studying the enemy. We know their weaknesses now. We know how to hurt them." Closed her eyes and let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 2 years. "How many ships do they have in orbit?" she asked. "Approximately 600, replied. "But they are spread thin. They are trying to control an entire system with ships designed for conquest, not occupation. If we strike at the right time in the right place, we can hurt them badly." "And then what?" "Then we take back our home, one battle at a time, one city at a time, one life at a time, however long it takes." Thought about the millions who had died. She thought about the children who had been born into occupation, who had never known a free Earth. She thought about the soldiers and fighters and ordinary people who had given everything for this moment. "Give me the word," said, "and we begin." Straightened her back. The fire that had driven her entire life burned bright in her chest. "The word is given," she said. "Make them pay for what they have done. Make them remember this day forever, and bring our people home." Across the solar system, in hidden bases and secret ships, humanity prepared for war. The storm had been gathering for 2 years. Now it was ready to break. The Velar had no idea what was coming. The 3rd anniversary of the invasion began like any other day. The Velar soldiers patrolled the streets of occupied cities. Their ships orbited lazily above the conquered world. Their commanders drank and celebrated, confident that their dominion would last forever. They were wrong. At exactly midnight Greenwich Mean Time, the signal went out. A single coded burst from President's bunker, transmitted to every resistance cell on Earth and every ship in the asteroid belt. One word that would change the course of history. Strike. In orbit, the Velar orbital stations detected nothing unusual. Their sensors showed empty space, just asteroids and debris floating in the endless dark. They had no idea that death was already among them. The Reaper-class destroyers had drifted into position over the past week, their engines cold, their systems silent. To Velar sensors, they looked like nothing more than rocks. Now, as one, they came alive. Admiral led the attack from his flagship, the Vengeance. His voice was calm as he issued his orders, but his heart burned with the fury of 1,000 suns. All ships fire at will, show them no mercy, they showed us none. 27 destroyers opened fire simultaneously. Their magnetic accelerators hurled metal slugs at incredible speeds, punching through Velar shields like they were made of paper. Their EMP warheads detonated against enemy hulls, frying electronics and leaving ships dead in space. The first wave of attacks destroyed 12 Velar orbital stations and 47 warships. The enemy had no time to react. By the moment they understood what was happening, it was already too late. Captain Park commanded the Soul's Fury II, a Reaper-class destroyer named in honor of the ship she had saved 3 years ago. Her target was the Dominion of, the massive flagship that served as the command center for the entire occupation fleet. Target in range, her tactical officer reported, shields at full strength. Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. Fire the penetrator. The penetrator was masterpiece, a kinetic warhead wrapped around an EMP core, designed to punch through shields and detonate inside the target. No one had ever used one in combat before. No one knew if it would work. It worked. The projectile struck the Dominion of amidships. It tore through the shields without slowing down. It punched through 3 layers of armor, and then it detonated. The EMP blast rippled through the flagship like a wave of death. Every system failed. Lights went dark. Weapons went silent. Life support began to fail. Thousands of Velar soldiers found themselves trapped in a dying ship, helpless and afraid. Did not stop there. Her ship circled the crippled flagship, firing again and again. By the time she was finished, the Dominion of was nothing but debris. "This is for everyone you killed," she whispered. "This is for Earth." On the planet below, the resistance rose as one. Sergeant Menu led his fighters in the largest operation of the war. The Velar had built their regional headquarters in what had once been a shopping district. 5,000 soldiers were stationed there, along with the general who had ordered the destruction of Menu's neighborhood 3 years ago. "Remember why we fight," Menu told his soldiers before the attack. "Remember who we lost. Remember what they took from us. Tonight we take it back." His force numbered 200 fighters against 10 times their number. Any rational observer would have called it suicide. But Menu had spent 3 years learning how to fight an enemy that should have been unbeatable. He knew their weaknesses. He knew their blind spots. And he knew that the chaos of the orbital attack would distract them. The assault began with explosions. Menu's teams had spent weeks planting charges throughout the district, hidden in walls and under streets. When they detonated, entire buildings collapsed on Velar positions. The enemy's neat formations became chaos. Then the fighters moved in. They struck from every direction, appearing from tunnels and basements and rooftops. They used weapons they had captured, weapons they had built, weapons they had improvised from scraps and desperation. They fought with a fury that the Velar had never seen before. The battle lasted until dawn. When the sun rose over, the Velar headquarters was a smoking ruin. The general who had tormented the city for 3 years was dead, killed by Minyu himself in close combat. Of the 200 fighters who had joined the assault, only 47 remained standing. Minyu looked at the survivors. His arm was broken. His face was covered in blood. He had never felt more alive. "We won," he said simply. "We actually won." Across the planet, similar scenes played out. In every occupied city, resistance forces rose against their oppressors. Not all of them succeeded. Not all of them survived. But they fought, every single one of them, with everything they had. Commander Shin coordinated the chaos from her mobile command center. She had spent 2 years preparing for this night, and her preparation showed. Velar reinforcements found their routes blocked by collapsed bridges and destroyed roads. Communications between enemy units were jammed by hidden transmitters. Supply depots exploded before troops could reach them. The Velar were not just losing, they were being systematically dismantled. In orbit, Admiral pressed his advantage. The Velar fleet was in disarray, their command structure destroyed with the flagship. Individual captains tried to rally their forces, but they were fighting an enemy they could not see, using tactics they did not understand. Destroyers hunted them through the debris fields, appearing from nowhere to strike and then vanishing again. The Velar called them ghosts. They called them demons. They called them every name they could think of, but nothing could stop them. When the Velar finally attempted to retreat, they discovered something terrible. Commander had not just been coordinating the ground war. She had also been tracking every Velar jump route, every safe passage, every escape path. Human ships were waiting at every exit point. Of the 600 Velar warships that had occupied Earth's system, only 12 escaped. 12 ships out of an armada that had conquered half a galaxy. 12 ships carrying survivors who would spread the word of what humanity had done. Admiral broadcast a message on all Velar frequencies. His voice was cold and steady, without anger or hatred, just simple truth. "You came to our home, you killed our people. You burned our cities and murdered our children. You thought we would surrender, you thought we would break. You were wrong." He paused, letting his words sink in across the void. "We are coming for you now. Every ship you have, every station you have built, every world you call home. We will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. We will not stop until justice is done. Run if you want. It will not save you, because humanity remembers, and humanity does not forgive." On Earth, President emerged from her bunker for the first time in 2 years. The sun was rising over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. She breathed the fresh air and felt tears running down her face. They had won. After 3 years of darkness, after millions of deaths, after suffering that no words could describe, they had won. But the war was not over. The Velar Empire still existed. They still held dozens of star systems, still commanded thousands of ships. They would regroup, they would rebuild, and they would come again. Unless humanity stopped them first. Looked at the sky, at the stars that were just beginning to fade in the morning light. Somewhere out there, Admiral was already preparing for the next battle. Somewhere out there, the Velar were learning what it meant to fear. "This is only the beginning," she said softly. "We are not done yet." The reckoning had come, but the true test still lay ahead. The 12 Velar ships that escaped Earth carried more than survivors. They carried fear. A fear so deep and so terrible that it spread through the Empire like a plague. Emperor received the reports in his throne room. He read them 3 times, convinced they must be wrong. His greatest armada, 800 warships that had conquered countless worlds, destroyed by a species he had dismissed as primitives. His flagship, the pride of the Velar fleet, torn apart by weapons that should not exist. Impossible, and yet the evidence was undeniable. "Prepare the Grand Fleet," he ordered. "Every ship we have, every soldier we can spare. We will crush these humans once and for all. We will burn their planet to ash and scatter their remains across the void." His advisors exchanged nervous glances. The Grand Fleet was the Empire's last reserve, the force that protected their home systems. If they sent it all to Earth and lost, there would be nothing left to defend against the Empire's many enemies. But would not listen. His pride had been wounded, and pride was all that mattered. Before the Grand Fleet could launch, something unexpected happened. The collective, who had watched the galaxy in silence for 10,000 years, made an announcement. They would stand with humanity. They would share their technology, their knowledge, their ancient star charts. They would provide protection to any species that opposed the Velar Empire. It was unprecedented. The never interfered, the never took sides until now. Within days, other species followed. The race that the Velar had enslaved for generations rose up against their masters. The aquatic species from the deep oceans of a distant world sent ships to join the human fleet. Even the warrior clans of Prime, who respected nothing but strength, sent envoys to Admiral. "We have watched you fight," the ambassador said. "You faced an enemy that should have destroyed you. You did not surrender. You did not break. This is something we understand. This is something we respect." The galaxy was changing. Species that had lived in fear of the Velar for centuries saw humanity's victory and found their courage. The empire that had seemed invincible was suddenly surrounded by enemies on every side. Admiral understood what this meant. He gathered his commanders for a council of war. "The Velar are wounded but not dead," he told them. "If we give them time to recover, they will come back stronger. We cannot allow that. We must strike now while they are weak. We must break them completely." Captain Park, now promoted to admiral for her actions in the Battle of Earth, stood beside him. "Our fleet is growing every day," she said. "Between our own ships and those of our allies, we have enough to challenge them. But we will not survive a direct confrontation with the Grand Fleet. We need to be smart." Chief Engineer had an answer. She had spent the month since the Liberation studying captured Velar technology. She had learned their secrets, and she had improved upon them. "I can build a new generation of weapons," she said. "Hybrid systems that combine our innovations with shields and Velar power cores. Ships that are faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything the Empire has ever seen." It took 3 years to build the Liberation fleet. 3 years of constant work, constant training, constant preparation. During that time, the Velar Empire began to crumble. Rebellions broke out on a dozen worlds. Trade routes were disrupted. The economy that had sustained their conquest for centuries began to fail. Emperor grew desperate. He sent assassination squads to kill human leaders. All of them failed. He offered peace treaties with secret clauses that would have left humanity vulnerable. President rejected every one. "They had their chance for peace," she said. "They chose to murder our diplomats instead. There will be no second chances." The final campaign began on a morning that would be remembered for eternity. The Liberation Fleet numbered over 500 ships, drawn from a dozen species that had once been enemies. At its head was the Vengeance, Admiral's flagship, now upgraded with technology that the old Velar Empire could not have imagined. The campaign lasted 18 months. World after world fell to the Liberation Fleet, not through genocide or destruction, but through liberation. Populations that had lived under Velar oppression for generations rose up to welcome their saviors. The Empire's armies melted away as soldiers deserted or surrendered. In the end, Emperor stood alone in his throne room as human soldiers broke down the doors. Sergeant Minu led the assault team. He had lost his left arm in the battle of, replaced now with a mechanical prosthetic that was stronger than the original. He had fought across half a galaxy to reach this moment. "It's over," Minu told the Emperor. "Your empire is finished. Your fleet is destroyed. Your worlds are free. You have lost." Stared at the human, with hatred burning in his ancient eyes. "You cannot kill me," he said. "I am the eternal flame. I am immortal." Minyu shook his head slowly. "I'm not going to kill you," he said. "That would be too easy. You're going to live. You're going to watch as everything you built crumbles to dust. You're going to see the species you enslaved celebrate their freedom. And you're going to know for the rest of your miserable life that you could have avoided all of this. The warned you. You should have listened." Emperor was placed in a prison cell, where he would spend his remaining years watching the galaxy he had once dominated move on without him. 1 year later, Admiral addressed the Galactic Assembly for the first time. He stood before representatives of 100 species, the first human to ever speak in that ancient hall. "We did not seek this war," he said. "We wanted only to live in peace, but when peace was to us we fought back, not for conquest, not for revenge, but for survival and for the freedom that every sentient being deserves." He looked out at the assembled delegates, beings of every shape and color imaginable. "We know what it means to be conquered. We know the pain of occupation, the grief of loss, the despair of subjugation. We will never forget, and we will never allow it to happen again, to us or to anyone else. From this day forward, humanity stands as a guardian of freedom. Any species that seeks peace and liberty will find a friend in us. Any tyrant who threatens the innocent will find an enemy." The hall erupted in applause. On Earth, the reconstruction continued. Cities were rebuilt. Populations grew. Children were born who would never know the horror of occupation, who would grow up in a world of peace and hope. President stood on the steps of the rebuilt United Earth Capitol. Beside her were the heroes of the war. Admiral Park, whose tactical genius had turned the tide. Sergeant Minyu, whose courage had inspired millions. Commander Shin, whose shadowy network had brought down an empire. Chief Engineer, whose inventions had given humanity the weapons to win. The elder had traveled to Earth for the first time. He walked slowly through the memorial gardens, where the names of 800 million dead were carved into walls of white stone. So many names, so much loss. "Your species is remarkable," he told President. "In all my years I have never seen anything like you, such fragile bodies, such short lives. And yet you refused to die, you refused to surrender. You took an impossible situation and found victory." Looked at the names on the walls. She knew too many of them personally. "We are not remarkable," she said quietly. "We are just stubborn, and we protect our own." Considered this for a long moment. "Perhaps that is what makes you remarkable," he said. "The universe is vast and cold and indifferent. Most species learn to accept their place in it, to bow before those who are stronger, to survive by submission. But not you. You looked at a galaxy that had decided you were weak, and you refused to accept its judgment." He turned to face her, his ancient eyes holding something that might have been hope. "They have watched for a very long time. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have seen species ascend and vanish. And we have learned that the galaxy follows those who lead with courage. Humanity has shown that courage. Now the question is, what will you do with it?" Thought about everything they had been through. The death and the suffering and the long, dark years of occupation. The heroes who had given everything so that others might live. The children who would grow up in a better world because of their sacrifice. "We will build," she said finally. "We will explore. We will learn and grow and reach for stars we cannot yet see. And whenever we find others who are suffering, we will help them. Because we remember what it was like to have no one. We remember what it was like to stand alone." She looked up at the sky, at the endless expanse of space that had once seemed so terrifying and now felt like home. "The Veeler thought they could break us. They thought we would surrender. They were wrong, and anyone else who makes that mistake will learn the same lesson." Across the galaxy, species who had once dismissed humanity now spoke of them with respect and wonder. The tale of the small blue world that had an empire became legend. Parents told it to their children. Teachers taught it in schools. It became a symbol of hope for everyone who had ever been told they were too weak, too small, too insignificant to matter. never corner a human, never threaten their home, and never ever assume they will surrender. Because they will not. They never will.